How are we going to manage that identity? The thing is, I have far more questions than I have answers. The only comfort I can offer you is the entire set of professions, from psychology to social psychology to anthropology to political science that studies political identity, they don't have answers. They have a lot of questions, they have a lot of examples, but there is no consensus among people who spend their time studying identity about identity. So I can't convey a consensus to you. I can make a set of remarks. Two things that everybody agrees on. One is that there's no such thing as identity, whether individual or collective, without memory. Way back 17th century, John Locke said, what is it that could possibly unite the infant that I was once to the old man that I have become? One wouldn't recognize the other. He said the only thing that can unite it is some continuity of body inhabited by memory. So personal identity is attached to memory. And when you see the tragedy of Alzheimer's advanced, when memory disappears, you see that in a certain sense, even though the body of the person is their identity has disappeared. Just as memory matters tremendously to the individual, it matters to the community. When I was flying here, I was in Logan, Boston. The person standing behind me made a remark, a gentleman maybe a few years older than me. We started talking. He said, what are you doing? Going to USC. Why? To give this talk. He said, you know, I'm Armenian. He told me his name. I recognized it. He's a famous surgeon, now retired, but very famous surgeon, like with multiple honors. I said, so I'm going to ask you a very abrupt question. Will you answer it? He said, sure. What's your identity? He said, my identity? I don't know. I think like every identity. I said, okay, what's every identity? He said, I suppose identity is personal memory of personal experiences plus cultural memory of the cultural experience of the nation you belong to. Perfect answer in a sense. I mean, one of the fundamental elements. And then he said, of course, the memories would be different if you were in homeland or in diaspora. We're in diaspora, so my personal and cultural memories also include the memory of the society I live in. So to some degree, I have to struggle with my identity to integrate cultural memory of the Armenians and the cultural memory of America, which are so different. And the ideal, he said, is to have an identity that both draws on the receiving society and contributes to it. He said this as flawlessly as I'm just speaking, like he didn't have to think about it, he just came up with it. A day before I came, I was talking to a friend, a middle-aged Armenian woman, and I said, same question, just don't think, just tell me, what's your identity? I said, what's your Armenian identity? She said, well, I'm a Kesaptsi. Mostly, I spend my Armenian time with other Kesaptsis. I don't really spend that much time with Armenians who are not Kesaptsi unless they're exactly in my economic and sociocultural circle. She's very prosperous. And she said, also I'm Armenian because I give money to Armenia every year. And she named the institution to which she gives several $1,000s a year. So, what is identity? Kesap. In entire diaspora, there are very few places that have as territorialized an identity as Kesap. And she said, when I go there, I realize that this is home. No place else is home in the same way. And that brings up another element of identity. Your identity, to some degree, is established by where you feel at home, where you belong. I cannot have a territorialized identity. The first time I went to Armenia was 1994. I spent 2 weeks there, 2 good weeks, difficult times, good weeks. When I was coming back, I flew through Paris. And when I was in Paris, a group of us went to essentially a garden cafe, and we were sitting there. There was me, there was a woman named Arpik Bisakyan, the editor of Harac, the preeminent Armenian newspaper of Western Europe, her assistant, who also an Armenian from Istanbul, Bedros Terzian, a man from Lebanon, Krikor Buludyan, a man from Lebanon, Apo Berejiklian, like me, originally from Aleppo. We were talking. We were talking in Armenian, some French sentences thrown in, some Turkish, some Arabic, and I realized with a real deep sadness, I just spent 2 weeks in Armenia for the first time, never felt at home there the way I feel at home with these people. For me, being Armenian is not a place. It's being with certain kinds of people. My identity only exhibits itself fully with certain groups of people. I don't have a home. I don't have belonging except when I'm with certain people.